I'm Kim, volunteering for GIC talk. And how you feel?
Good.
It's May, and do you know that it's Family Month in Korea? Yeah. And I hope you have a great time with your family on Children's Day and Parents' Day. And as the weather becomes warmer, you may expect to go outside with your friends and family. But however, you came here for the GIC talk, and I'm more than happy to see you all here for today's talk. Thank you so much. And I will remind you to turn your cell phone on silent so that you do not interrupt the talk. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Stuber, who has been lecturing as an assistant professor in Chonnam University. He is going to give us a talk titled The Successes and Failures of the Obama Administration. So let us welcome him warmly.
Thank you. I will read what you have in your hand as truly as I can. The successes and failures of Barack Obama. This is just my opinion, not the opinion of the GIC. Success number 1. He beat Hillary Clinton in the primaries before the 2008 presidential elections to become the Democratic Party nominee. He did this with 62% of his campaign funding in the primary stage coming from registered Republicans. He succeeded again in defeating John McCain and his ill-thought-out running mate Sarah Palin. This pick was as if McCain didn't want to win. But the pick was not nearly as disturbing as Barack Obama's pick of Joseph Biden. Why? Because Biden had been the most pro-war Democrat in the House Foreign Affairs Committee ever. And he led that committee to steer votes in favor of huge military overspending and unwise and unnecessary wars throughout his career. Failure 1, F1. Obama ran on a platform of we're going to change Washington, and he not only failed to change Washington, in most cases he did not even try, or caved into Republican demands even when the House, Senate, and White House were all in Democratic control. How is this possible? Because so many Democrats are owned by the same corporations that own Republicans, for one, and all but 2 being millionaires themselves are inclined to vote for bailouts for the rich, most of which happened before Obama took office, right at the end of Bush Jr.'s reign, with Goldman Sachs President, Secretary of Treasury Hank Paulson jamming a bill through Congress that handed the richest bankers in the world trillions of dollars to clean up their own sickeningly bad investment choices that had in turn caused a meltdown in the U.S. housing markets to the tune of 10,000 home foreclosures per day. The USA is now experiencing less foreclosures at only 1,400 per day. Mind you, the daily foreclosure figures in the USA depression of the 1930s were nowhere near as high as this 6-year low for the USA now. This amounts to failure number 2. These are entire families financially ruined in numbers far worse even on a per capita basis than in the 1930s. Yet no one seems to care in the USA except maybe the families living in their cars under an overpass in, say, Tampa, Florida. Thus, Obama and his team have done precious little to stop home foreclosures because to do so, for one, would include bringing jobs back from overseas. He promised to, quote, put Americans back to work, and has failed on this issue too. Why can't he bring back jobs that paid $15 to $30 an hour from countries that received all these U.S. labor jobs and paid 14 cents to 52 cents per hour in wages? The question answers itself. But Obama never even tried to halt the tax exemptions that give corporations a tax break for moving American jobs overseas. We're up to 5. Honestly, what kind of government would give companies a tax break for sinking their own people's jobs? A government controlled by the owners of the means of production. More proof of Obama's failures But only the workers and regular folks would call these failures. After all, Obama was mostly elected by Republican money, hence for himself and his cronies, these are seen as successes, is that as far as one can ascertain, 0 jobs have moved back from overseas. Or better put, if any have, the number exiting compared to the number coming back to the U.S. must be a ratio exceeding 100,000 to 1. A quick peek at Google finds headings like, can't find a job, move overseas. And U.S. firms move abroad to cut taxes. Not mentioning cheap labor. When Barack Obama was in the Illinois State Senate, he said, in order to achieve single-payer health insurance, all we have to do is have Democrats in control of the House, Senate, and White House at the same time. When he was elected president, that dream came true. All 3 areas of the U.S. government were controlled by Democrats. And when it came time to negotiate a better health care package for Americans, Obama said, single-payer health care is a non-starter. Meaning, he wouldn't even fight for it. This means that he not only ran for office knowing he wasn't going to change anything, but he also openly lied about where his positions were on dozens, nay hundreds, of areas. Failure number 6, through about 600. Failure number 7, Obama was the only African American to edit the Harvard Law Review. He was a top constitutional scholar at Harvard. Yet, with all the Constitution-busting aspects of Patriot Act I and Patriot Act II, Obama never once brought up the idea of rescinding those laws. Nor did he even offer any amendments to those laws based on the Constitution itself. The most egregious boo-boo, abolishment of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is the notion that you must be told why you're being arrested when you're being arrested. This has been in effect since 1215, when King John was handed the Magna Carta. That's 798 years of legal precedent that George Bush Jr. wiped out, and Obama never saw fit to try to get back. No habeas corpus is a very scary thing. It leads to dictators who can arrest you and not tell you why. They can call you, you're a potential terrorist. Then they can take you offshore, a mile offshore, and arrest you, not only arrest you, but try you, and you're not allowed to present a defense. Why are you not allowed to present a defense? Because as an enemy terrorist, as an enemy combatant, by military law, you don't get to present a defense. Then they can find you guilty, then they can execute you, then they can throw you off the boat, without ever telling you why you were arrested in the first place. This is no longer a democracy, and I'll prove it over and over again. But for Obama to be a constitutional scholar, say he's going to change Washington and not attempt to bring back habeas corpus, might be, but it isn't, could have been his worst mistake. It's a big mistake. Oh, it's gigantic. So, if you're not told why, and the Patriot Acts still are there, and we've gone through King John, and Obama never tried to get it back, and the detainees can be moved offshore, we must be on page 3. Failure is too kind a word for Obama's dismal record in many cases. The Obama cabinet was stacked with hawks, that means right-wing, conservative, military-first guys, from the beginning. Robert Gates, continuing as defense secretary even after Bush, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz were gone. Joseph Biden, again the most hawkish pro-military spending member of the Senate when he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee as vice president. Coming in also stinking out loud as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who never once voted against a single thing George Bush Jr. ever wanted. She never one time said, I don't think this war over here makes sense. She never once said, let's stop funding Iraq war or Afghanistan war. In fact,
she pushed her partners in the Democratic Party to continue funding that illegal, immoral, 1 million people dead, 2 million refugees war, and Obama added 2 million more refugees in Pakistan, but we'll get to that later. She's terrible. And you know what? She could easily be the next president of the United States, but we'll get at that later too. Nemsi. So his initial cabinet is failure number 8. Not only did he fail to rescind Patriot Act 1 and 2, Obama never once brought up the concept of trying to reenact any of the 186 environmental laws that were scrapped under Bush 2. You better believe George Bush II went out there and said, you guys in big business can do whatever you want with your land. It's as if he had Ron Paul stuck in his ear, some libertarian kook. So they scrapped the environmental laws that Frank Church wrote in the 1970s. I know he wrote them because his best aide was a B.C. Young, my friend, and fellow activist within the Democratic Party, and gone. So, if Obama's changing Washington, why doesn't he bring the environmental laws back? Oh, but there's lots of reasons why he didn't do that. He also pushed hard for the Keystone Pipeline, an environmental disaster. That's at 10. Just in the building part, no less the carbons emitted once finished. He also favors fracking, which is blowing up parts of the underground to find natural gas. Regardless of the horrid effects this has on the water supply, etc. I mean, fracking's no good. Pretty much everyone knows it, and Obama is still in favor of it. So he's not the environmental president. Check. He's not the pro-labor president. Check. He's not the pro-constitution president. Check. He smells like a Republican. He really does. His approval rating is below 50%. But not surprisingly, he has dipped from 85% to under 50% among African Americans as well. Why? Perhaps this is because his wholesale pardon of illegal immigrants already in the USA and inability to have a consistent immigration policy has lowered the value of labor so much that it has put even menial jobs, often done by African Americans, in peril due to the fact that illegal immigrants are willing to do the work for half the minimum wage, or many times less than $2 an hour, or better put, 75% less than the minimum wage. This has also caused outright hatred and violence between Latinos and African Americans in many urban settings, notably Los Angeles, and in my state, three cities in North Carolina, which is now over 22% Hispanic. The irony is that Hispanics make great neighbors. They're fun-loving. They generally go to church every Sunday, and are happy, even when sending half of their tiny wages home. They're still very happy people. They don't create a lot of crimes. Oh, there are some Mexican kind of mobs, sure, but they don't really create a lot of crimes. This follows the pattern of globalization efforts that have lowered the value of labor worldwide. Anything that's involved in globalization means that this company is seeking out the cheapest possible labor, even in Gaesong. As you recall, in Gaesong, the South Korean companies paid the North Korean workers a solid $75 a month for very technical scientific work. Well, of course, they're going to make a profit. And I know Mr. Chung, who worked as the reunification secretary under President No, and he invented the Gaesong, and he loved the Gaesong, and he had 88 South Korean companies in the Gaesong, with 200 lined up wanting to go to Gaesong. But they were ripping off North Korean labor. Period. That's just what they were doing. Yeah, reunification, so we can get cheaper labor. Good idea. Yeah. Irony. Minutes after his 2014 State of the Union address, Obama continued to negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership. In his speech, he said how much he was going to do for out-of-work manual laborers in the United States. So let's look at the TPP. You see, Obama, oh, we got it up here too. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go off here a little. Obama said, I want to bring jobs back. I want to help American labor. He left that speech, and less than 15 minutes later, he was continuing to negotiate another free trade agreement, which would all but guarantee more American jobs going overseas. We, the ministers and heads of the delegation for Australia, Brunei, Darussalam, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and the United States, and Vietnam, have just completed a 4-day ministerial meeting in Singapore where we have made substantial progress toward completing the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement for all TPP countries, an ambitious, comprehensive, a high standard agreement, high standards. Like we need cheaper labor, and we need free utilities when we move our industry in there, please. That's high standard. That achieves the goals established in Honolulu in 2011, is critical for creating jobs and promoting growth, providing opportunity for our citizens and contributing to regional integration and the strengthening of multilateral trading system. It's pretty strong already. For those who don't know, GATT2 and the World Trade Organization has a set of rules that are more important than any individual country's laws. Therefore, any individual country's sovereignty is compromised at the very least by GATT2, which was brought to us by Democrat Bill Clinton. It started with NAFTA, which pretty much meant that all the very bad polluting companies in the U.S. were going to move to Mexico, where babies are now born without brains. It's called anencephaly. Geez, no wonder we didn't want those industries. Well, what did it mean for Mexicans? Well, $3 an hour instead of $1, so it's a good deal for them if they don't mind their kids being born without brains. That's a big if. So here we go with the TPP. This is the official opening statement after the Singapore meeting. What it means is yet another free trade agreement in which developed countries ship off their labor jobs, even service jobs, to lower wage countries, thus hurting the workers in the United States the most. But let's look at Europe. The workers in Spain and Greece and Portugal and Ireland and Italy are not doing that well either. Because their jobs too have been shipped to cheaper labor. So what can we do to prevent this? I'm not sure we can do anything. Obama is nowhere near a pro-labor president and has done the bidding of big money on Wall Street, the money you will recall that got him past Hillary Clinton way back in 2007-08. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is among countries, half of which already have free trade agreements with the USA, notably Mexico, in countries with very small gross domestic product per capita. That means money they make per person, money per year per person. In 1960, the money per year per person in Korea was $100. Now the money per person per year, per family per year is $32,000. That's the miracle on the Han. And it's a great thing, but at what cost? So the TPP partners, Chile, while the U.S. has $49,922 per capita of GDP every year, Chile has 18,000, Malaysia 17,000, Mexico 15,000, Peru 10 or 11,000, Vietnam 3,500. The USA has fashioned an extremely stringent agreement that will open up the USA to goods without tariffs from countries whose per hour factory wage is as low as 14 cents. Don't believe me? Look it up. The country's Vietnam. This will surely cause yet another flood of American labor jobs exiting to countries that will, in fact, give those countries more wage slave jobs. The average Chinese who worked the farm and ended up with 3 80-kilo bags of rice with which to trade the rest of the year for his money was way better off than the Chinese working in the factories who end up in debt and bigger in debt and bigger in debt every single year. I have interviewed Chinese labor leaders 2 different times, very much in secret in China. I'm going back again this summer, and I can tell you the factory workers in China are not very happy. There are police buses being turned over. There are people risking their lives. Because at 52 cents an hour, they will not be driving one of the Audis we see on Ring Road 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. They will not be buying one of the really nice homes out on Airport Road in Beijing either. No. So, is that communism, where 1% have everything? No. Is that American democracy, where 1% have everything? Yes. Oh, democracy? Are we sure? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. And I think Obama has, unfortunately, just continued the pattern. This also fills the coffers of the top 2% of the world, the already filthy rich. That's Obama's game plan. Note the civil unrest in Greece and Spain, and I also mentioned Portugal, Italy, not to mention Ireland, to name just two where people under 25 are facing 50% jobless rates due to work being sent to lower wage countries from Europe, and Germany's strict austerity demands in order to keep lending them money. The USA is about to find out how strict our lenders can be, China, as we owe $17 trillion. I couldn't write it up here, the wall's not big enough. Now, and Obama has done nothing to bring down the U.S. annual deficit or to lower the U.S. debt. Nothing. Even Clinton did better than that. Thus, Obama's biggest failures to spread unrest and war in the Middle East, Tunisia, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, I hope not, and continuing the use of drone warfare, which was started under Bush because Bush, after all, was a fascist, but Obama saying, I'm going to bring the boys home from the Middle East, is now killing people by drones at 10 times the amount that Bush ever dreamed of doing drone warfare. His continued backing of incipient free trade that only benefits the very upper class while decimating his own labor force, his inability to regain vital environmental protection laws, his unyielding support of illegal, super cheap labor within the United States, his failure to overturn the Patriot Act, and tacit approval of the 2010 Citizens United Supreme Court ruling that allows corporations to donate unlimited amounts of money to political campaigns anonymously, ranks Obama more god-awful than Clinton was. Clinton, you'll recall, managed to start this free trade fiasco rolling with NAFTA, continued it in a massive way with the pushing and signing of GATT II, which created the World Trade Organization, his 1995 Banking Reform Act, which allowed banks to lend out $30 for every one they had in the bank, thus causing the eventual subprime mortgage crisis in 2008, and worst of all, his 1995 Welfare Reform Act, which began the decimation of support for America's poor, which have been steadily growing since January 1993, when Bill took office. Prisoners rose from 1.2 million to 2 million under Clinton alone, and continue to move upward mostly due to racist drug wars that are little more than massive anti-minority wars. Hence, Obama has done little or nothing to help African Americans. I know many who really don't like him anymore. They wouldn't have him to dinner. So, the question is, I'll get to it later. Has Obama done worse things than all of these? Yes. Clinton killed 35,000 innocent people in Belgrade while failing to hit his target, Slobodan Milosevic, who later died in jail. Obama has killed an unknown number of people in Pakistan, a country Bush's army never invaded other than by drone, also increasing drone attacks dramatically and initiating them in at least 3 other countries, as I jumped to earlier. He's enraged Russia by backing the rebels against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and added to the death count in Tunisia, Libya, and possibly Egypt as well. Egypt continues to receive $1.3 billion in aid from the United States every year, as if we have money to give out, which we don't. Which Obama, his policy in Israel has been mixed and confusing, but has run counter to the U.S. love affair with the bloodthirsty Israelis, who generally kill 10 to 20 Palestinians for every one Israeli lost in conflicts. So by at least admitting that Palestine has a right to their own land, Obama, you would say, you've got to give him a draw there. I'll give him another success number 3. I'll give him success number 3 by not doing anything. That's pretty good, comparatively. To his credit, Obama, through emissaries, has played an even hand in that particular case, stunning considering the messes he's created elsewhere in the Middle East. Obama continues the annual spring folly of war games in South Korean Army, Failure 21. I'm all in favor of being at the ready, but these practices could be done anywhere and need not be done right on the North Korean border, especially the naval borderline. Each year, these war games are committed right on North Korea's doorstep, when in reality, they could be done anywhere, boy, I'm repeating myself, in the Pacific, a large ocean. It shouldn't be a surprise then that North Korea also practices firing its cannon rounds at the same time. The sinking of the Chonnam, the bombing of Yongpyeong-do should have been ample evidence that continuing the war games on the border of North Korea was simply too much of a provocation by the United States. Don't think that North Korea is the provocateur. They are not. If you have the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines right on your border every March, you're going to be a little nervous. And you might do a little test here and there yourself. The provocateur here, of course, is the United States. There's a little more on page 5. Obama never tried to reduce costs of health care. Never. There's nothing about Obamacare that ever tried to reduce the cost of anything. By forcing pharmaceutical companies, doctors, hospitals, medical schools, nursing home facilities, surgeons, and other healthcare professionals and hospital corporations to lower their prices via the leverage that would have been created with a single-payer system, which he promised way back as an Illinois state senator. He got his dream, Democrats everywhere, and guess what? He never brought it up. Of course not. The single-payer healthcare systems that we find in South Korea, France, England, Germany, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the Netherlands, almost everywhere that has an industry that has any money at all, which we don't because we have fought 89 times. We have gone into foreign countries with our military since World War II. 89 times. That's why we got no money. That's why we got no health care. That's why American public schools are rotting and being replaced by charter schools that are nothing but psycho-religious, ultra-right-wing junk. I know, I taught in one for 2 years. All he tried to do was to get people who could not afford health insurance to somehow put the money together to buy it. There were 40 million Americans without health insurance. He got 7 million of them to say, okay, I'm going to buy health insurance rather than eat. That was a miracle. Why do you think they didn't buy health insurance? It's because they couldn't afford it, okay? They couldn't afford it. But he got them into the system. Good job. But that is a very right-wing job for a very right-wing group of medical professionals that it's ugly. And of course, 33 million people still didn't sign up. Smart move. Whew. But you see, people shouldn't have had to buy health care in the United States. It should be free. In England, your health insurance is free. When you go to the doctor, there's no bill. And if you skip work, they'll pay for your day of work and your transportation. That's because England doesn't start a lot of wars. They can afford health care. That's 23 failures, and I gave him 3 successes. 2 electoral, and we'll call Israel a draw. How do such flops get reelected? When such natural and human disasters, I mean Obama and Bush 2, Clinton and Reagan, not to mention Bush 1. Bush 1, Panama, 3,500 people died in order to arrest one man, Manuel Noriega, who used to be a friend of Bush 1, who was paid by the CIA. But let's wipe out 3,500 people to arrest one guy, because we have to test our night vision glasses. Come on, man. These people have stunk out loud. And how do they get reelected? Via pure-blooded, old-fashioned, very successful propaganda. The failure to investigate and report the facts by 99% of the media in the USA, and its complicity in reporting bold-faced lies, has been pointed out by Senator Al Franken in Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell Them, a book now over 10 years old. The research for this book was done by 14 Harvard graduate students, and it shows that Fox News and many others openly lied and knew they were lying when they said the lies they lied about at the time. Yet Americans soak up the news as gospel and have become so hoodwinked they're likely to vote for anyone. Wait, they already have. And Obama's one of them, sorry. Obama's largest failure, can you believe I've got one to top all, has been to continue and exacerbate Clinton's immense move of the Democratic Party to the right. The democracy, U.S. democracy, with no working watchdog press, except on the internet, and no real choices when it comes to voting for president, senator, congressman, or anything else, is a sham. Democracy is dead in the USA. It was buried in the year 2000 when Bush stole an election he rightfully lost, but it died in 1980. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I can prove that for you. But from Ronald Reagan till now, every single labor union that went on strike lost, except one, the UPS, which came to a draw because they deliver packages, and you pretty much have the company as a worker driving a truck. You got them where you want them. And so they were able to keep what they had. They didn't gain anything. Every other striking group, well, you stay on strike 2 more days and we're moving your job overseas. 2, 1, boom, job's gone. It's that simple. Why wouldn't they reduce costs? And it's easy to reduce costs because there are no more tariffs. I'm not saying that people around the world shouldn't have factory jobs, but let's have a worldwide minimum wage of $10 an hour. Let's see how globalization works when the 14 cents an hour and 52 cents an hour, billions of people pay $10 an hour. Now let's see you pay to bring that stuff back to the land of the debt and the debt and the debt, known as the USA. Half the things purchased in the world are bought in the USA. That's why China keeps lending us money. They're lending money to a sinking ship. They're continuing at $1 billion a day. Here, have some more. And we're sinking. What? Chinese people are smart. Why would they do that? Well, they hold the foreclosed mortgages and other ones. They hold the mortgages on over 25% of the U.S. homes now. Uh-oh. And every single American works for China 9 weeks a year to pay off the interest on the debt. Not to pay off the debt. To pay off just the interest on the debt to China. 9 weeks worth of our taxes go just to pay China. So every American works for China 9 weeks a year. Good. Now your house, which has a mortgage by Citibank, but Citibank just takes care of the mortgage. The real holder of the mortgage is the PBOC, the People's Bank of China. They really own the mortgage, but they ask Citibank, please continue to send out the bill so it looks like you still own it. Those folks probably spend 25 weeks a year paying off their mortgage. 25 plus 9 is 34 weeks a year. For 1/4 of the United States, they're working 34 weeks a year for China already. We are sinking fast. And any country that has 70% of its GDP coming from exports, that's South Korea, and 67% of its food coming from overseas, that's South Korea, had better watch out because the globalization game could go kafink. And South Korea's ability to purchase food from China, well, China, could be compromised, if not kerflooey. Kerflooey means good luck. And South Korea could be in a tenuous position because of its dependency on foreign trade. For years, even the idiots at the IMF have said South Korea must make a much bigger domestic market. They must depend on their own people buying things more. This 70% dependency on foreign trade is dangerous. Well, it is. It is. And so we have a situation where the world power is changing. The US dollar only means something because oil is bought and sold in dollars. That's the last scrap of worth at all for the US dollar. It's turning into the renminbi, RMB, yuan. It's turning into that because the Chinese have told people buy gold. And instead of having Fort Knox with all this gold backing the US dollar, which ended in 1970, we have gold throughout China, in everyone's house, backing the Chinese currency. It's brilliant. In China, you can buy gold at any post office, any department store, anywhere. They are encouraging you to buy gold. In the U.S., you can hardly buy gold anymore. I'm totally serious. The U.S. government doesn't want people in gold rather than the U.S. dollar. And if the U.S. dollar sinks, what will happen to the U.S. stock market? When you sell stocks in the U.S., what you get back is U.S. dollars. So if they're not going to be worth anything, the U.S. stock market could take a slight tumble. When it takes a slight tumble, watch out for World War III. You think I'm kidding? You got the Ukraine going. You have the Middle East fully cranked up. You got North Korea as a side bet, just in case other bets fail. You have 50% of the U.S. Navy parked right here between Korea, Taiwan, and China. 50%. And yet we have 4 wars going on in the Middle East. What's our Navy doing over here? We also have the U.S. versus China in Africa. I mean, why fight these wars in our own backyard? We could have U.S. versus China for minerals and oil in Africa. Why not? We could have the U.S. attacking Iran, where China gets 30% of its oil. If the U.S. attacks Iran, the problem isn't the 280,000 people in the Iranian army. That would be a problem. Iraq only had 10,000 and it took 8 years there. No, the problem would be the fact that China would be mighty interested in keeping their oil supply going. The problem in the Ukraine is happening because Russia's natural gas is here. The Western Ukraine is a crescent here. You must go through it to get to Europe. Europe gets 40% of their natural gas from Russia. And the Ukrainian guy said, if you attack us, first of all, they kill people to get their jobs in government. That's it. And they say, Russia, if you attack us at all, we're going to blow up your pipeline. And who's backing these criminal idiots that are the head of the Ukraine now? The U.S. It's not funny. Afghanistan wasn't funny either. In the 80s, our boys in Russia wanted to build a pipeline from the Caspian Sea to the Indian Ocean, therefore circumventing Iran. But we hired Osama bin Laden to knock them out of there because we didn't want Russia to control its own oil outside of its borders. Osama bin Laden and the Mujahideen did a very good job with shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles, and indeed the Russians went home. And it wasn't even 10 years later when the U.S. went right in there, using 9/11 as an excuse, oh, how convenient, and using Osama bin Laden as our enemy when he had been our friend for so long. Boy, the Bushes know how to turn on you, don't they? And who do you think built the pipeline through Afghanistan? It's done. Unocal. 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 And there's 200 miles more that has to go through Pakistan, and that's why Obama, who said he was going to bring everyone home, decided to attack Pakistan. Because he's got to finish the pipeline. 2 million refugees in 6 weeks in June of 2010. I know because the lady who told me right here at the GIC. She had to pull her UN mission for refugees out of Pakistan and Afghanistan when they were getting kidnapped and killed. Oh my God. And how did that happen? The U.S. will hire people that are not in the army and known as mercenaries, and at $20,000 a month. And they call big, huge town meetings in Pakistan, city meetings and town meetings. I know from the guy who was in the Supreme Court, Munir Malik. He told me right in the GIC too. Big meeting. Line up the government. Have a big, huge meeting for everyone in town. And then kill the entire government of town after town after town after town in Pakistan. Is that on the news? No. But when a member of the Supreme Court tells me that's how they got it done, I believe it. And he was shouting down Musharraf from the top of buildings. And he was poisoned almost to death. So I gotta believe him. And he won the Guangzhou Human Rights Award. That's what Obama was doing in Pakistan, because he had to finish the pipeline. It makes me sick. This guy is as bad as Bush ever was. And if the U.S. has a choice of Obama, who's about this far right, somewhere between Attila the Hun and Hitler, and then the right wing, which is beyond Hitler, fascist pigs, then not only is U.S. an oligarchy, not only is the U.S. lowering the value of labor everywhere, but the U.S. is the evil empire. If you don't believe me, talk to me after. I know a lot about this. I wrote speeches for presidential candidates for 12 years. I know about this stuff. I go and interview people like Malalai Joya, who's in the Afghanistan parliament until they kicked her out and tried to kill her 5 times. The U.S., beware of any trade deal you ever made with the U.S. Chorus free trade, winner U.S. Anytime the U.S. signs an agreement, it's to help the U.S. only. I hope the farmers here do well. I hope the car companies here do well. I hope Korea, because this is where I live, does well from now on. But to do so, you might want to be a little bit less dependent on trading with the U.S. of A. That's it.